What's up everyone, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for your weekly dose of 7 on Sunday. Today I'm counting down 7 bands that have never had lineup changes, they've never changed out members, and I don't know if y'all know or not, but that's incredibly rare. Some of you may note that this feels like a follow-up episode of sorts, and it pretty much is. I put out an installment a while back called 7 bands that have revolving door lineup changes, but today I kind of wanted to flip the script and put a spotlight on those that have had the chemistry and the bond to not hate each other, I suppose, and to stay together for all the kids out there, the bands that have never featured a lineup change. Now there's 3 simple requirements in order for a band to be eligible for this list. 1, they have to have been together for at least 10 years. Number 2, they have to have at least 3 members. No duos, no solo acts, because a solo act not having a change, I mean, that's a little bit too easy. And number 3, obviously the band has to have not had any lineup changes, asterisk, since the release of their debut album. Sometimes stuff happens behind the scenes, you're still in high school, you're college, you're figuring things out. Before the release of the first album, I understand it. Maybe you changed out a bassist, a drummer, whatever. I'm talking about 7 bands that haven't changed out their lineup since they released their debut album. A lot of time, planning, and TLC went into the making of this episode, so please drop a like on it. Help me get this one to 1,000 likes. If you happen to be new in town, then please hit that subscribe button. Keep in mind that these will be ranked from newest to oldest in terms of when the band formed, so that will determine where they fall on the chart. So let's get this thing started with my number 7 pick. The newest band on the list today were formed in 2003, and they've never had one single lineup change. They're a pop-punk band from Baltimore, Maryland called All Time Low. Alex Gaskarth serves as their lead vocalist in addition to playing rhythm guitar. Zach Merrick is on bass, Jack Barricat brings it on the lead guitar, and Ryan Dawson bangs the drums. Throughout their time together as a band, they've dropped 7 studio albums dating all the way back to the Party Scene that came out in 2005. What I love about All Time Low is that you can really just pick up on the brotherly love that they have. They can throw jabs, they can joke around, they have great stage banter, and they have a nice stage presence as well. I've seen them live a few times, and it's always a treat in concert, whether they're doing interviews or just putting music to tape and blasting it out to our eardrums. All Time Low have definitely been onto something, and it's great to see that they've stuck it out together and they've always had each other's backs. Formed in 2002 over in the UK, the 1975 haven't had a single lineup change since their inception. Maddie Healy is on lead vocals and tackles the primary songwriting duties. Ross McDonald is on bass and synthesizers. Adam Hahn does lead guitar, synthesizers, and sampling. And of course, George Daniel does the drumming, percussion, sampling, and also is one of the primary writers. What's really interesting about the 1975 is that they didn't start releasing music officially right away. Sure, they had old versions of their songs. I would definitely recommend looking some of those up because Sex and some of the other tracks like Robbers have a totally different feel. They've undergone a sonic evolution and they've grown together as brothers as they've gotten older. And can you name another band that took more than a decade to put out their first record? Because they went from 2002 until 2013 to put out their first official album, which was their self-titled. Now, since then, they have blown up. Obviously, a ton of you watching this video probably know and love, or maybe hate the 1975, but I Like It When You Sleep was my favorite record of 2016, and these guys just sticking together, it seems like they have a bond. You know exactly what they want to do. They play off of each other. Obviously, you have George and Maddie that are kind of leading things, and then you've got the ones that play along, but that's not a bad thing because they ebb and flow off of each other, and I think that the music speaks for itself. Claiming the number 5 spot are the rock, experimental, and post-hardcore band THRICE that were formed in 1999. They're a 4-piece, and they haven't featured a single lineup change since 1999, since they were born as a band. And even during that hiatus period that they took between 2012 to 2015, they came back with every original member, which to me says something, because I feel that some bands will come back and not everybody wants to participate. That lets me know that this is about the music. It's not necessarily about one thing or about somebody being better than the other. Maybe they burned out in 2012 or 2011 and they came back because they had a reason to, and I think that's evident in their new music. Dustin Kinshrew is on lead vocals, doing rhythm guitar and performing piano parts as well. Riley Breckenridge is on drums with his brother Eddie on bass guitar and synthesizers. And then Tepi Teranashi is on lead guitar, synths, and occasionally does the glockenspiel. These four men round out the lineup of Thrice, and I've seen these guys pack a punch in a live setting. I only caught the end of their set, and I definitely kick myself for that. I cannot claim to be a huge fan simply because I don't know all their material, but I loved Vihissu when I got into that back in like 2006. I heard Image of the Invisible on Fuse, and I was hooked from there. I really think that they have an interesting style. They're not just your typical rock or post-hardcore band. There's a lot of ambient tendencies, and I really admire the fact that they have been able to return, and they've been successful once again. Number 4, COLDPLAY. The famed British alternative band formed in 1996 and somehow managed to never lose a single member along the way. Although if you've watched their documentary A Head Full of Dreams on Amazon Prime, then you know that that has not been an easy task at all. In fact, Will Champion, their drummer, was briefly fired in 1999, but that was before the release of their debut album Parachutes in 2000, so we're not gonna count it, and plus it was only for a couple of weeks. The band realized that they had made a mistake and they called him back immediately. So no harm, no foul. Chris Martin is of course the lead vocalist and performs on piano. Guy Berryman does bass and other various instruments. Will Champion is the drummer, as I mentioned, and he does occasional guitar and keys in some of their live performances, and Johnny Buckland is on lead guitar. Now, of course, I have to recognize Phil Harvey as well, because they've recognized him as their unofficial 5th member and their creative director. Love him or hate him, COLDPLAY are one of the most commercially successful bands of all time. Critics have been iffy on them, I know a lot of music fans have been too, but I'd be lying if I said I had anything less than a heart full of love for COLDPLAY. I don't know what it is about their music, but I've always found it very soothing, often very happy and exuberant and expressive, but they also have their darker material as well, which is why I love a lot of the songs on A Rush of Blood to the Head and Parachutes, and of course even their recent stuff like Ghost Stories. Up to this point, despite their time off, their hiatuses, and the fact that their future is kinda up in the air, not a single member has ever left or departed the band, and I definitely respect that. There's going to be a small portion of my audience today that are ecstatic that I am finally talking about my number 3 pick, BIFFY CLYRO. This is a Scottish rock trio that formed in 1995, and they've sported that same lineup the entire time. Simon Neil is their lead vocalist and performs lead guitar as well, occasionally doing performances on the theremin, which is a very interesting instrument, and the piano. James Johnston is on the bass guitar and synthesizer, and his brother Ben Johnston is on the drums. I know, it's probably a sin that I've never really talked about BIFFY CLYRO on my channel before, but you'll have to forgive me. I am an American, and these guys aren't that huge over here, and I've just never really had the time to get through their entire discography. Only Revolutions is their only full-length album that I know. Many of Horror is the song that introduced me to them, but it's just kind of crazy how you can flip a coin and they're huge over in the UK, over in any European state, but obviously here in the United States, not that many people know them at all. They're definitely talented, and I can see why people really connect with their kind of emotive and passionate style. A lot of their music that I'm familiar with at least definitely brings out a certain persuasion, and I love that that kind of style is brought to the forefront. I hope to get more into them, and I really admire their dedication. They're one of those bands where you can just see the heart. I've watched live performances on YouTube, and I can see from the music that I do know, the singles and more that I've checked out, that they are definitely pursuing something for the love of music. They've stuck it out. Obviously, 2 of them are already brothers, and it seems like when they're all together, it's basically just 3 brothers. Dialing it back even further into the 90s, we have Garbage that formed in 1993. I know a lot of people will get excited if you mention Garbage and you talk about alternative music or just the 90s in general, because they definitely had that aura about them that a lot of people were super connected to. Garbage started out in 1993 and never had a single lineup change, with Shirley Manson on the lead vocals and guitar, Steve Marker on the guitars, Butch Vig, a very big name in the production world, on drums, Duke Erickson on the bass guitar and keys, and that rounds out their lineup. They may have had some internal fighting and differences, but that really hasn't been that apparent to the outside world. When you think of a rock band, especially one from the 90s, you think of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but Garbage were just kind of calm. They definitely rocked it the hell out, but it seemed like they kept themselves stable. Wow, I can't even believe it. Paramore formed in 2004 and not a single lineup change. This is something that's so unfathomable, so respectable, and it's just... Sorry for the bad number one joke. At the actual number one position, we have Radiohead, an experimental rock band and art rock group that formed in 1985. Despite being one of the most critically acclaimed bands of all time, they've somehow never cracked at the foundation, and they have a turnover rate of 0%, meaning they've never lost a member along the way. The much respected Thom Yorke is their lead vocalist, in addition to playing guitar, piano, and keyboards. Johnny Greenwood plays the guitar, keys, and does orchestral arrangements. His brother Colin Greenwood plays the bass guitar. Ed O'Brien is on guitar, effects, and backing vocals, and of course Philip Selwell rounds it out on drums and percussion. I'm honestly shocked at the fact that Radiohead have never had a lineup change. They're one of those groups where you think that there would be some internal clash over the fact that, oh, Radiohead are changing up to be this more artsy band after starting off as kind of a post-grunge outfit, and they've changed the dial so many times, they've kind of been all over the map, but it's never felt scattered, and I think that maybe that's what's held them together. As a group, as a band, with so many working parts, they seem to flow off of each other quite well. There's a natural balance in the studio, and you can always hear that coming through, even when not every member is doing a huge part of the tracks. If you listen to, say, Amnesiac or Kid A, you know that not everybody is doing something all the time, but it's really cool to see that everybody was down for the changes. As I've fallen more in love with Radiohead over the recent years, it's become quite apparent that these dudes definitely have a lot of love and respect for each other. Thom Yorke obviously does his solo stuff as well. You might know Atoms for Peace, which he did with Flea. There's a lot of creativity in his bones, but not just him. The credit has to go to the rest of the band because they've stuck it out and they continue to put out amazing music, with their most recent release, A Moon-Shaped Pool, being one of my top favorites from them. That's it for this episode of 7 on Sunday. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this one, maybe even learned something along the way. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. I'm definitely hoping for a part 2, so if you want to see this, I already have more than enough candidates. That could come out sometime next year and help me get this video to 1,000 likes. If you happen to be new to my channel, then please hit that subscribe button. I talk about music for the love of music every single week on both of my channels. If you would like to help support me on Patreon, thank you so much to everybody who does, then tap this card over in the corner. I would like to thank some of my $50 a month patrons like Brandon Barrenfield, 3RS, and Josh Lincoln. I appreciate your support. Other than that, a couple of recent videos here, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.